Hi, my name is Carter Kessinger. I'm a right-handed pitcher at Yale University. I'm just entering my senior year, and last week I got Tommy John surgery. In this series of videos, I'm going to detail my recovery process. I'm going to explain how I believe I tore my UCL, the days and weeks leading up to the actual surgery, and every week of recovery after that. I think that this series is going to be helpful not just for me to catalog how I progress week by week, but I think it'll be a good way to process everything that's going on. I think this will be a good resource for me to look back on to see where I was at different points of my recovery. I hope that this series will be a resource to anybody else who's going through the same process. You can watch these videos and kind of see how I have recovered week by week, and just know that you're not alone in this, and there are going to be a lot of other people who have gone through this surgery as well. So I just hope that these videos can be helpful in some way. Alright, so how did this happen? Well, for starters, my experience is obviously unique to me, and unlike a lot of other people's that I've talked to about Tommy John. Most people I know who have torn their UCL have done it with a single traumatic pitch. They throw a pitch, they feel a pop, their arm gets tingly, and it's a pretty telltale sign that they've torn their UCL. Now for me, I never had that experience. I never threw that one pitch that I felt my UCL pop. I never felt any tingling. I never had that experience. All I know is that after I returned to school, after playing summer ball to get an MRI, my UCL was torn. Throughout my school year, this past year, I was used primarily as a reliever. I ended up throwing, I believe, 21 2/3 innings, all in relief, mostly up to maybe 35 pitches at a time. I never really threw much more than that in a particular game. So going into summer baseball, I was used in the same way. In the beginning of summer, I threw multiple inning, low pitch outings, topping out maybe at 40 pitches, so nothing too unusual. I then had this one outing where I went out, I toiled a little bit, and I ended up throwing almost 60 pitches, which was supposed to prepare me for some starts that I was expecting to get later in the summer. Now, I haven't actually started a baseball game since high school baseball. With the 2 COVID years and then being a reliever last year, I definitely was not built up to it. But the goal for the summer for me was to get some starts, build up my innings count a little bit so that when I came back to school for my senior year, I'd be built up and potentially be able to compete for a spot as a starter. After that 60 pitch outing, I made a start about a week later in which I went 94 pitches through 6 innings, the most I pitched since high school. My arm has definitely felt in a long time. It's kind of weird being out there because I haven't started in a long time, and so getting back into the rhythm of that feeling was definitely a little strange. But I made that start. I feel like I recovered fairly well from that. The next couple days, my arm was sore, but it wasn't anything ridiculous. It was pretty much what I was accustomed to. The issue is that at the time, my summer team, was on a road trip. And so we didn't play any home games. We were on the road. We were staying in hotels in Ohio and Pennsylvania and West Virginia. And so by the end of this road trip, we have this doubleheader. And for the first game of this doubleheader, we had pitchers available. Now, the second game of the doubleheader, we had another pitcher who was supposed to be able to pitch, but unfortunately his arm was bugging him, so he didn't have that opportunity, didn't get to go out and pitch. But I was the only pitcher available. I was the only pitcher who was left available on the roster to actually pitch that second game. So I ended up actually throwing on 4 days rest. I ended up actually throwing another 94 pitches. I threw 94 pitches on that first game, that first start. And I threw another 93 pitches in that second game on short rest. And I pitched pretty well too. But again, I was definitely not built up to that workload. And even though I pitched well, my arm was in some pain during the start. The next day, as per usual, after a start, My arm was pretty sore. I don't usually throw the days after my starts, at least not in high school. And I remember that I went to go lift a couple days after the second day, after that start. I went to go lift, and I could not extend my arm. It was a very bizarre feeling. It's not one that I ever remember actually feeling during high school, so it was a little concerning. And even the third day after the start, I couldn't extend my arm. My arm was really sore, and I ended up seeking my athletic trainer for some medical attention, just to make sure that there wasn't something going on that was problematic. At the time, we didn't identify it as a UCL injury because, again, I had none of the telltale signs. I didn't have that one pitch where I felt a pop. I didn't feel any tingling. I was able to pretty much pass all the range of motion tests. So we just thought, okay, there's some soreness, there's some tightness maybe. Let's get soft tissue work in and continue from there. So I ended up making 2 more starts. The first one, I was in so much pain, and I was able to get through 5 innings somehow, mostly soft tossing. But I was able to get through 5 innings, and it felt horrible. I made another start about a week later. This is after, again, getting significant soft tissue work in, and that start didn't feel too bad. I didn't have great results, but that start didn't end up going terribly. A little past halfway through my summer league, I was able to go home. My new pitching coach, wanted all the pitchers to go home and get some rest before coming back to campus in the fall, so that everybody would be fresh by the time they got here. And I was able to go home July 18th, and I got home with the intention of taking a couple weeks off. We figured at the time that what was going on with my arm was just tendonitis, just needed some rest. So I took a couple weeks off of throwing, and by the end of the second week, I picked up a ball again, and I decided to try to play some catch. As soon as I started to accelerate my arm, I felt the same pain that I felt when I had been pitching during the summer. It was very strange to me because it didn't seem like I was doing anything that would put it under any duress, that I was doing anything that would make it hurt. So I ended up actually shutting down for the rest of the summer. I didn't pick up a ball again until I got back to campus, which was 4 weeks after that. I picked up a ball, again, having not thrown for 4 weeks, and as soon as I started to accelerate my arm, I felt the exact same pain. So I got the issue checked out with my trainer. He said there was enough of a problem to warrant getting an MRI. I ended up getting the MRI within the first week of being back to campus. That same day, maybe 4 hours after getting the actual MRI, I read my results and it said that I had a tear of my UCL, which was not at all what I was expecting. Again, there was nothing leading up to this that would give me any indication that that was the injury. So it was definitely a shock. It was tough. It was very tough because I knew that meant that my season was over, that I wasn't going to be able to compete on the field this year with my team, which definitely took some time to process and was challenging for me. It's never easy to know that you're not going to be able to play because of an injury, and you're not going to be able to go out and compete with your brothers. But this was tough for me, especially since I was entering my senior year. This was the year where I was supposed to be a team leader. I was supposed to step up. I was supposed to, carry some more innings, and ultimately help my team go to an Ivy League championship series and further. In that one moment, I knew that I was not going to be able to contribute in that way. And so that was really tough for me. And it's something that I'm pretty sure I've come to terms with it, but it's still something that is obviously a struggle for me. But, it is what it is, and just the timing of this was incredibly unfortunate. The weeks leading up to the surgery were pretty stressful. I had a lot of things to consider, a lot of things to figure out before I actually got the surgery. I think the best news in all of this is that I was able to identify the issue pretty early. I was able to have my surgery just a week ago, which was September 20th was my surgery date, I was able to identify all these issues relatively early in the school year so that I know that whether I play here next year, whether I go somewhere else to play next year, for my grad years, for my years of extra eligibility, I know that I'll pretty much be ready to go in the fall. So that's great news for me. I was also able to get my appointment booked really quickly. Within a week of getting my MRI results, I was able to set up an appointment with Dr. Chris Ahmad. He's the Yankees team doctor, and he has done many Tommy John surgeries. He's actually done the surgery on a number of my teammates here at Yale, so I knew I was going to be in good hands. I was able to set up that appointment. I met with Dr. Ahmad. We were able to get an appointment date for the following week. So 2 weeks after I got my MRI results, I was able to get my surgery. And that was honestly the best part of this whole experience is, again, the fact that I got it so quickly. And I didn't have to wait a long time and delaying the inevitable. My mom was able to come to town and she helped me to the hospital, and I was able to get the surgery done there. And then afterwards we drove back up to New Haven, where I was able to actually catch the tail end of a team practice, which that made me really happy. The day of the surgery itself was stressful in some ways, but in other ways it actually went really well. In the days leading up to the surgery, I was required to get a COVID test. I took multiple tests, but for whatever reason, these tests never had my name or date or any kind of identifier that would allow the doctor to legally operate on me, knowing that I didn't have COVID. So one of the things I had to do when I got to the hospital was take a PCR test, and I ended up waiting around the hospital a little while longer than what was expected in order to get my results in. Other than the COVID tests, everything went fairly smoothly. Everybody I met down at the hospital was really nice, was very helpful, very good bedside manner, and helped me feel at ease the whole way through. As soon as I got there, I filled out some paperwork, I sat down, I had to answer some basic medical questions. Right before I went into surgery, I had to take out my contact lenses. So by the time I walked into the operating room and came out, my vision was not great. It was pretty blurry. But I remember going into the operating room, and I remember the last thing I said was I told the doctors to do a good job, and then I fell asleep. And I don't actually remember the point where I fell asleep. I don't remember drifting off. I just remember being asleep. And when I woke up, I was in the recovery room, where it took me a second to realize, wow, like I just had Tommy John surgery. It's kind of something interesting to grapple with when you think about it. It's something that a pitcher never wants to hear that they have to get. You never want to hear, oh, like you have to get Tommy John surgery. But it was something I grappled with sort of in the immediate aftermath was, wow, I just got this surgery that nobody ever wants to say they have to get. It took me a while to get sort of woken up from the anesthesia. The anesthesia, by the way, is not bad at all. You just feel really sleepy, and as you're in the recovery room, it's like you're waking up from a really quick nap. You're slowly become aware of the things that are going on around you. You may feel a little nauseous. I remember feeling a little nauseous, but it wasn't anything terrible. Within a few minutes of waking up in the recovery room, the doctor will ask you to do some hand movements. And actually, while you're in the operating room, the doctor will make sure that all of the range of motion things that you should be able to do with a healthy UCL, that you're actually able to do those. So your arm will feel weird in the days after the surgery, but just know that you will be able to eventually do those movements because the doctor checked that before you were sent out into the recovery room. While you're waking up, the doctor will give you some snacks, maybe graham crackers. After all, going into the surgery, you're not supposed to eat or drink anything after midnight the previous night. The doctor will give you some snacks like graham crackers. I remember getting banana muffins that were really good at the time, some water, some apple juice, and just you'll spend the next hour or so waking up, recovering, getting to a point where you can walk with help, and after that, you're pretty much good to leave the hospital. The surgery itself, the whole process, for me, from arrival to leaving the hospital, maybe 5 hours. The surgery itself is, You're in the operating room for maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, and most of that time they're honestly just prepping you for the actual incision. So you don't spend too long at the hospital while you're doing this surgery.